Welcome to the Pleasure Points Podcast. Happy Monday. I'm your host, James Rohr. I'm super stoked that you're here. So we have a great episode. It's a phenomenal guest here. But before we get to that, let me give you some housekeeping things. We have an email account for the podcast now, pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. That's pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. Send over your questions, your thoughts, your stories. I want to hear from you. If there's any topics you want me to discuss more about, please let me know. You can hit that again, pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. And I have my first sponsor, sort of. She's my fiance. She's awesome. And she is the driving force behind all the essential oils. So I've talked about the doTERRA essential oils on a bunch of different episodes in different capacities. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can follow her on Instagram at the Oilgram. TheOilgram at the Oilgram, and you'll get in touch with her. You'll see the latest and greatest promotions, learn about how to use essential oils in your life to feel good inside and out, look your best. And it's been really tremendous since I've incorporated them into my lifestyle, use them with Wyatt, use them with my clients. Tremendous at disrupting patterns, creating good vibes, balancing the body, and you smell great. So it's awesome. Check it out. She's amazing. And this Instagram account is starting to blow up. So check it out. All right. Now, without further ado, let's get to today's guest. Today's guest is my good friend, Marika Frumes, and she is a woman who wears many hats across hospitality, tech, and community building, and quite possibly matchmaking, which I discovered near the end of this podcast. She's a woman who knows how to throw a good gathering, and she does consulting about that too. She's the co-founder of a women's meetup group called Her, and she's launched a co-ed group called Trust in Us. You can find her on Instagram at Marika Frumes. That's MarikaFrumes. And she's the spark behind a lot of the social events that I talk about from my time in New York. And I'm very proud to call her a good friend. We had a great time chatting, and I hope you'll enjoy listening. So let's get this party started and welcome Marika to the podcast. And we're live.
Hi.
Hey, we've been talking already for like an hour. I figured we might as well start the recording.
I've gotten all the juicy stuff out of the way.
Yeah,
Spare you guys.
now we're ready for mass consumption. Welcome to the podcast cave. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
Super stoked that you're here. Where should we start now that everyone's listening?
I mean, Jim, there's a lot we can go with here. I'm in your hands.
Should we talk about how I don't think I'd have a social life in New York if it wasn't for you?
I think you're giving me a little bit too much credit, but thank you. I appreciate that.
You throw a good party.
Thank you.
But before we get into that, let's dive right in with the egg freezing, because you have just had that whole experience. So let's illuminate the people, give them a heartfelt inside view of what that was like.
Absolutely. Should I give our people an idea of the demographic of the lady on the other end of the mic, meaning I'm a 35-year-old female?
Give it to them.
Yeah, no, just for context. So I'm 35 and currently in a relationship. And the reason I mentioned
Back off, fellas.
is people often assume or have assumed when I was going through this process that I was very much single and I was doing this because of that. And I just want to put it out there that that's not the case. And I did this because I wanted to create a choice for myself down the line if I was in a position where nature got in the way because of my age for me having children, that I knew that I did everything that I could when I had the, I guess, healthier eggs, as they say, so I wouldn't be mad at myself. And going through the process, it was a casual decision, to be honest, at the beginning. But as I went through it, I've realized how powerful and emotional it really is. And it brought up issues, or not issues, but it brought up fears around the idea of having children and not being able to have children, which I actually didn't think about before. It was always a given. And then going through this, you're like, oh no, this is why people do IVF. This is why people freeze their eggs, because this isn't a given. It was a really powerful experience. I'm glad I did it. It's not easy. It was really, the first week and going through the hormones and the injections was totally fine. but it's the process after where your body is actually recalibrating. That's the difficult part, because that's when the emotions start to come, and that's when you actually start processing what you just went through and why you went through it. And you feel kind of psycho.
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. I'm curious about the decision to do it.
Yeah.
Was this, I mean, you said you just kind of, was it super premeditated, or was it, I mean, I don't think you go on and do this on a whim.
The factors that people should consider when doing this, the number one factor is age. So after 35 years old, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm just speaking anecdotally from what I've learned, the quality of your eggs supposedly really changes. And from the graphs I've seen at the doctor's office, it's kind of like an S curve downhill. And, in women that are having pregnancies after 35, it's considered a geriatric pregnancy.
It's crazy, right?
So,
it's one of the most fucked up labels in all of medicine.
Yeah. So whether we like it or not, we feel young. We are young at heart and in body, but I think our eggs do start to change. So I was realistic about that. And again, what I said before, I don't want to come to a point in my late 30s where someone tells me that, look, sorry, your eggs aren't healthy and you might not have a chance of a proper pregnancy. Or what I also thought about was I'd love to have more than one child. And for number two, maybe I'm in my 40s and it becomes harder. So having that as a reserve. So it's really just choice.
Yeah. And I saw you were very... I don't know what the word is, out there or visible
open
with
about
open in social media, which I thought was really empowering and
that was
wonderful.
Awesome. I'm so glad I did that. I've never received more feedback from both men and women with questions or support. The men were incredible. There was a lot of men just shouting out like, thanks for documenting this. This is awesome. And women just reaching out being like, thank you. I have no idea how this works. How does this feel, or what does this mean? And the fact that there were so many questions, it encouraged me to post more, because I realized we really don't know a thing about this. I think 5 years from now, this is going to be kind of like a normal thing and everyone will be doing it, because also, the genetic implications of where we're moving in science. Once other countries start making this the norm in terms of genetic selection, like this is going to be something that everyone's engaging in.
Right. And I saw that you had a her event, right, where you talked about this experience.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was surprised about when I was looking at your Instagram story was that the recommended age to consider doing this is like as early as 28.
Yeah. So this was one of the things that I learned, and that I truly, truly, truly mean when I say I wish I did this earlier. Even with my outcome, I had 13 eggs that were retrieved. And out of those 13, 12 were viable to be frozen. Those eggs have not yet been genetically tested. So after you genetically test those and you actually see which eggs are healthy, and then you unfreeze them, you might end up with 1 or 2 or 3, as opposed to, let's say I was 31 or 30 or 29. The irony is that not only would I have likely gotten like 30 eggs, but out of those 30 eggs, they would have been healthier because you're younger and the DNA of those eggs is more secure. So yeah, the younger you are, and it's of course this ironic thing because you don't have any money when you're in your late 20s or early 30s. And I think that slowly will start to shift as well as more companies start to be approached by their employees to have this as a benefit, as this becomes more of a norm in our country. But it is something I wish I did earlier, because you're going through the pain of it. You might as well like have some good eggs, Right. And so in the process, there's a lot of shots. Yeah. Right. There's 2 shots a day. And then towards the end, there's 3 shots and a trigger shot, which you have to take within 10 minutes of being told, because that trigger shot releases a hormone that will put you in a position to, at a very specific time, have your eggs be removed or released.
Right. Yeah, released.
Something.
Harvested.
I felt like a guinea pig.
Yeah, and you were saying that the after effect was more intense than the leading up to it, to the retrieval.
Yeah, the last week has been incredibly difficult. I felt very much out of my body and not present while being aware of me feeling that way. So, you're present to the fact that you don't feel normal, but you're like, I can't write an email. It's been that annoying.
Wow.
It's just super hard to focus, and there's a lot of just anxiety, and you feel a little, like, the best way to describe it, it's a massive hangover, and it doesn't go away, and you feel a little high, but not in a good way. So yeah, I've been communicating to people in my life, like, stay away, or I'm not doing well. It's been hard to actually formulate sentences.
Wow.
Today's better.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
I figured it would be entertaining one way or another. So
Yeah, one of the I've had a lot of acupuncture clients who've gone through it, and, not being a woman, not having gone through it myself, my perspective is obviously very different. But my one kind of suggestion for them is just don't make any big decisions afterward.
yeah.
It's like you're going to be on an emotional roller coaster, so that's just going to happen. Try to ride that wave, and don't make any decisions, don't make any conclusions about yourself or your situation or your partner or not partner, or let's not go too far down the road or, too deep into the darkness, and just know that at some point you will come back out. And
100%. I totally agree. And one thing I would add to that I didn't get as much education on, but I would really encourage anyone that goes through this to do, prepare yourself in advance physically with food, with, really getting your body into the most optimal shape, because it matters. It will affect your process and how many eggs are retrieved. You really want to have a good cycle, and you really, 3 months before, want to start eating for that. So a recommendation would be to find Alyssa Vitti. She is a hormone expert and really speaks about the body holistically. She has an app called Flow Living and a book called Woman Code, and that book is incredible for how to feed yourself pre and post. And I've been following her recommendations for after. I should have read the book before I went through this. But, her recommendations have been great.
Yeah.
But right now I've really just been on my food game and really very diligent about what I'm putting in my body, because it does affect how you're feeling.
So what changes have you made?
So I don't tend to eat as much animal protein, but I am right now because the body needs it. I'm also eating a ton of cilantro and flax seeds, because apparently that helps remove some of the estrogen from your body. I'm, again, not a doctor, but this is things that I've been told.
The listeners know not to,
Yeah.
We're just shooting the shit here.
We're just shooting shit. Ton of fiber, ton of vegetables. So it's basically be a good human, eat healthy, all the things you should be doing all the time. And no coffee.
Really?
Yeah, no coffee. Actually, coffee is very much a no-no, according to Alyssa, for females, especially living in New York, that are in their 20s and 30s, because we're already adrenally fatigued.
Right.
And the coffee is continuing to stimulate. So it's putting us in double spin zone.
Sure.
And only in your 50s, when you're starting to experience menopause, that's when the coffee is going to do you some good, because at that point your body needs it. She's actually really particular about that. And I felt it when I had coffee during the process. It was really not nice. I didn't feel well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are you drinking coffee now?
Not really.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to. No. I mean, yes and no. It's one of those things.
I didn't start drinking coffee till I had a kid. I was good. I made it, because I would see these adults. I remember being a teenager. I'd see adults who were like, I can't start my day until I have coffee.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be beholden to anything that way. And then Wyatt was born, and I was like, oh, I think maybe I'll try some coffee.
It's just good.
It's amazing. Now I love it every day.
It's a culture.
It's amazing. Yeah. There's the whole thing. I appreciate the ritual of it.
That's right. It's a ritual. I agree.
Yeah. So you're in a relationship now. Has it changed? I know you're still fresh with it, but has it changed your kind of internal timeline of thinking about things, or, any of that stuff since you've done it?
Sure. So, hi, Ryan. I guess you'll hear it from the podcast. Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has. I felt a lot of fear because my process, even though I did get these 12 eggs, the doctor emailed me afterwards and I was like, we had a gray zone in your FSH hormones or whatever they're called. And I didn't even need to analyze or read more. I was like, gray zone fertility. No, it puts the fear of God in you. And even though it wasn't a conscious decision. I just locked up and felt so scared and imagined being a woman that was going through the struggle of IVF and really wanting something and not being able to get there. And all of a sudden, it was just this primal instinct of like, I really want this. And if there's some sort of obstacle, like, God, I need to start working on this and figuring this out now while I'm still at a place where things are functioning optimally, then 2 years from now where maybe I feel a little bit more secure professionally, etc. Because yeah, it's really just a primal instinct for women, I think. So that was a huge shock. And look, like the reality is I'd love to be a mom. If I'm not, I'll deal with it and figure out other ways to contribute to the world. But I think that would be awesome. And I think my partner's awesome. And I think we would have like a really fun, awesome little human.
Right.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I want that. So in terms of the timeline, yeah, like it made me be like, all right, stop waiting around for your success entrepreneurially for, you know, the apartment to come together, to have X amount of money in the bank. Like, we'll figure it out. This is important.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great piece of advice that I got a while ago, which was like, there's never a good time to have a kid.
Yeah.
Except for now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the time to have the kid is now.
Yeah, and you figure it out. And I think about where I came from. You know, my mom was a single mom that shared an apartment with like 5 families in the former Soviet Union. She literally swept streets at night to make money. Like, that's difficult, right? I'm fine. I think we'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah. But I would imagine going through that process where you're spending so much time and effort and energy and like putting your hormones on this intentional roller coaster that, you know, it's like you're obsessing in a good way about bringing life into the world and like tapping into this kind of creative flow. That I think it's interesting, you know, that you have this nice partnership now where it's like, you know, you could have that. You know, you guys could try to create one naturally. And I think about some other women that I know who do it when they're single. Yeah. And to be in that kind of energy, and then the harvest happens, the retrieval happens, and then they have, hopefully it's just a week, if not 2, 3, or 4 weeks of recovery. And, you know, then they go back out and the thing, you know, they log onto the apps and they've just gone through this like intensely emotional experience. I don't know, my heart really goes out to women in that experience.
I can't agree. And several times throughout this process, I verbally expressed to my partner how grateful I was that he was there and what a different process this would be without him. I mean, I think I would be losing my mind. It was fun to do it together and to have him give me the shots. And it, you know, I think gave us, whether we discussed it or not, you know, it gives you food for thought. Like, oh, why are we doing this? What does this mean? But alone, like, that's tough.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Hard, right? Yeah. I had someone who was telling me she's been struggling with some loneliness and depression, and you know, she's been single forever, and she was struggling with trying to find someone to pick her up after the procedure. Yeah. You know, and she was in a new city, and it was just like, you know, that all of these factors, you know, and it's just gets back into kind of the importance of community too, which is, you know, something that we talk a lot about. You know, you live in that world.
Yeah, and actually, I'll throw out a business idea for anyone that's listening. I'm telling you guys, this is like, you're going to hit gold here. You can call me or find me and I'll consult for sure on this project. But essentially creating a place for women to go during the day to actually give the shots to each other. And it's not like just like we're here for shots. It's a community gathering spot where you can get your nails done. You can have a massage. You can chill out and do work. But it's also a space where there's other women that are going through this process, or a registered nurse that can give you your shots. And it sounds silly, but like the shots, they're not that complicated. But I mean, I would spend like 15 minutes a night every night trying to figure out how to do the damn shot, and it's the same shot all the time. So
totally. And listen, I'm an acupuncturist, and I've put hundreds of thousands of needles in patients. And if I'm going to needle myself, even to this day, I still hesitate a little bit. Yeah. And like acupuncture is like super chill, and I'm like really good, like the needle technique, like all that stuff. And I still hesitate a little bit. I can't imagine that kind of shot.
No, I mean, the doctors and the nurses, because some of the shots I actually just refused to give to myself because, when I was going every morning to the doctor, I was like, just do it.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, this is not a natural human instinct. So it's significantly different when someone else does it. But it's a good business idea. And
For sure.
the people who facilitated my process, Prelude, it's a great platform for this sort of stuff. They were like, yeah, someone needs to do this. So whoever out there that has the funds, good business idea.
Because Prelude they're like revolutionizing the
Correct.
whole thing, right?
Yes.
So they're friends with Marika. Marika's friends with the guy that
with
founded
Martin.
it. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Because he's from Argentina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's got good friends.
Yeah. Shout out to Marika.
Yeah.
So because I was like, we were talking about you, and she was like, oh, I know that guy too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. The reason actually I got set up with Prelude was a year ago I had lunch with a geneticist, and he was the one. I think we were actually on a date. Whatever. But he was the one that was like, you need to get your eggs frozen, and really pushed me on it. And I was like, why are you so hell-bent on this for this person that you're just meeting for the first time? And he explained to me kind of the science behind what will be happening in the future with everyone starting to freeze their eggs and people looking at their DNA and being like, do you want your child to have blue eyes or brown eyes? And, is this disease something that, you want to... And
Right.
I'm not getting into the ethics of that, but it's
Sure.
just where potentially things are moving. So he was friends with Martin, and he connected me to him. And
Oh, nice.
that started that whole
Because Prelude's
conversation.
all about like making it cooler, making it more accessible, making it more
I
like
wouldn't
cheaper.
say cooler, but definitely they
Accessible,
meet
right?
you where you're at in your
Yeah.
fertility process, whether you are, a candidate for IVF or egg freezing, and they help you get where you're looking to go.
Yeah.
And also, I think they're just partnering with the best clinics in the country and revolutionizing how the process is handled, because
Great.
when you're choosing where to go for this process, it's so important you pick the right place, because people don't all store things in the same way. And that's kind of an essential process, because you don't want to go through all this and then freeze your eggs and have
Right.
all of them have freezer burn and not be viable. And Prelude, so their partner in New York's NYU. So I think,
Got it. And I knew a guy who was dating somebody, and she was going through the egg freezing process, and they were committed. They were in the thing together.
Yeah.
They were seeing a future, but it was like a little on the early side.
Yep.
But the stats, and again, Paul, sorry to the audience, but the stats are something like, if you're freezing a fertilized
That's
embryo,
right.
it's
85% versus 60.
yeah, it's way better.
Yeah.
And so they were like having that conversation
Yeah.
of like, how do we do this? Like, I love you, I like you, I can see a future for us, but like, are we ready to bake a baby on ice?
Yeah. I mean, they should have just done both. I thought that too when I found
I think they actually might have. I don't remember. Okay. I think they might have done, a little bit of it. And no, they did, because now I remember the guy was like, yeah, on one hand it was like totally anticlimactic. And on the other hand it was like, holy shit. Like, we just made a baby that we can hopefully do something with.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, like it's crazy what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
But you're looking at the time and the expense, and of course, like the woman going through that kind of hormonal experience, you want to maximize that.
Totally.
Yeah. Wild.
I didn't maximize it, just for full disclosure.
Yeah. I wasn't a veiled thing for you. Yeah.
And then I heard this embryo fact, and I was like, shoot, I should have gotten this information earlier. I was like, can we add something to this?
Fill the cup.
Right, exactly. Guy's job is not as difficult.
Hey, you don't know what it's like to masturbate under pressure.
I'm so sorry for you all. Really difficult.
I got you, fellas. Yeah, we've got our own struggle. On that note, let's talk about intentional gatherings, because this is something that you do. I've been
Yeah, I love it. Egg freezing to intentional gatherings.
Well, I guess there is a bridge. Should we
Okay.
talk? We didn't talk about it ahead of time. Should we talk about the intentional gathering that you had where you ambushed us with porn?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So let's just sort of set up for a second here. So Marika has been creating intentional gatherings for quite some time, and she was recently. The focus was a lot on women, gathering with women in this group called Her. My Jen's a part of that too, and then she started to branch out, and she wanted to include men, right? So we appreciate being included. And so she decides to throw this evening with a film. This is my memory of how it was pitched to me. An evening with an erotic filmmaker and like with a Q&A. So that's what I remember seeing on the menu. And I get over to the place in New York. It was a beautiful space.
House of Yes.
Yeah, the House of Yes. And I walk in, I see you were looking beautiful that night.
Thank you.
And you were like, yeah, I've just gathered 100 of my friends and we're going to watch porn.
Yeah.
And I looked at Jen and I was like, we're doing what?
Yeah, I like to keep invites vague because what I've learned is when you tell people exactly what they're signing up for, they're either going to dismiss it or create some sort of expectation. And part of what I really enjoy doing is creating an element of surprise and education and having you walk away with something that you would have you wouldn't have expected to. So with that particular event, we brought in Erica Lust. She's a female porn or adult filmmaker. Right. And her lens on it is that she's creating adult film that is centered around the feminist experience. So not just a man receiving pleasure, not just this like climactic thing of, you see the man and he's like, yes, glory, but it's more of a...
she just showed her O face, by the
way. Female-centric experience. So, everything that... A lot of the things, to be honest, that I do are experiments. Mm-hmm. They're social experiments, and that was very much one of them. Before we did the event and the screening, my fellow comrades and her and us were like, you should really watch these movies before we show them to 130 people. And I was like, absolutely not, because if I watch these movies, I will never be able to get up on stage and be at this event. So I didn't. And it was an interesting experience. The core, though, I will say, like, the theme and the topic at hand, to me, it doesn't matter. My purpose is to bring amazing people together and to find a way to get them talking and connecting so that they develop their own relationships and leave that event being like, could you believe that? We just watched that? Like, what a great conversation starter. Just put 130 people in the room and put on porn. Like, you guys will definitely have something to talk about now. That's the intention, And even at her events or her dinner specifically, we always have a guest of honor. And people really pay attention to who that guest of honor is. And we'll sometimes make a decision based on that theme. But what I always say, I'm like, guys, it's never about that guest of honor. Yes, they will inspire us and share an interesting story for 10 or 15 minutes. But it's always about what the energy that we create in the room with our asks or the topics that we bring to the table. And it's the same thing with all these events. The guest of honor is the tool to make you feel comfortable and to give you the hook to say, okay, well, like, I'm interested in conscious sexuality, I'll show up. But then the heart of the experience is the connection with the people there. Because why do people come to events? Sometimes it's for education. Most of the time it's because they're seeking connection. And when you tap into that and you lead from that purpose, I try to find ways to make it more comfortable for people to get past their social anxiety. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, we all have it. So I just provide opportunities for that connection.
It was awesome. I loved it. I mean, it was so bizarre and surreal and like awkward and just perfect. And like, I've definitely talked about it a bunch, and it was a great conversation. Like for Jen and I, for that night we were talking about it and it was great. I mean, it was great.
I like bringing topics to the table that also aren't necessarily, the norm, like this, or when we did the event in May with BB about conscious sexuality. So right now, this is a term that's really coming into play: conscious sexuality, tantra, etc. But when we had that event in May, I think the majority of that room walked away completely like mind blown with a lot of tools. And, not everyone is as woke as you are, Jim. There was a lot of men in that room that were like, okay, I am going home right now and calling my girlfriend or calling my partner or whatever it might be. And I've seen a lot of those people since, and they're like, that was a game changer.
Wow.
Because it's a seed,
Yeah,
so you plant a seed, and now I think, there's some people having better sex out there, and I'm happy to have played a part in that.
Yeah. Here. Shonda was on here, and we were talking about the conscious sexuality and the Goddess Institute and all that stuff. Yeah, I think it's super important work. I had a podcast where I was talking about the Taoist approach to sex, and so I was diving into that. And one of the things that I love about the Taoist approach is, they view sex as a pathway to enlightenment. And one of my favorite quotes is, it's something like, the Taoists don't look at sex in terms of sacred and profane. They are only concerned about good or bad technique.
Interesting. I mean,
there's nuances to that technique, and
it is a topic that is so important and under discussed in most of, the world. I think sex is enlightenment, and most of us aren't present for it. And it's an opportunity to really connect with ourselves. And I'm really grateful for the work Shonda's doing.
Yeah, it's important. So can you talk a little bit more about, I'm curious, two things. Like, one, how did you get into throwing a good party? And then what are some of the other tips and pointers and things the factors that you're taking into account when you throw a good party?
Okay. Sure. So I think for me, I'm a product of my grandpa. He was a big personality and a gatherer. I grew up in former communist USSR, and he was a lawyer that was responsible for building the community that we lived in. And, in communism, everyone shares everything, and there's kind of someone that plays a central role in facilitating the decisions, and he was that person. So there was constantly people at our apartment, and I remember my grandma being like, how many? 16? And how much? An hour? And like him just kind of chuckling, and my mom and grandma then running off and being like, oh my God, he did it again. Like, there's 16 people coming to the house in an hour. And I definitely caught that, I think, from him. It's in my blood. I can't explain it. I don't have any siblings, and my friends and the people in my life truly feel like family. And I really just love bringing people together from all sorts of different random worlds and seeing what happens when my friends meet, the networks combine. So a lot of people are often protective about their networks. I have zero of that. I believe in merging worlds and seeing beautiful things that happen from that, and people sharing their gifts and having those gifts kind of expand as the network becomes smaller. And I think for me, where I got really fortunate is I formalized the gathering through my involvement with her. So in starting that with Baba in New York in 2015, it put a name to something that I'd been doing for, as long as I can remember. And putting a name to a gathering and creating a format around a gathering that really resonated and worked showed me that this is a skill set that maybe not everyone knows how to throw a great gathering, because, people were like clamoring at the doors to come to these dinners. And that was news for me. I was like, why is this resonating so much? And I started to understand that not everyone creates the space for people to be their most authentic selves and for a genuine connection, or for like an experience that's not full of bullshit niceties and small talk, but for someone to actually connect with another person, learn something, share something about themselves. So in terms of how I approach gatherings, any gathering that I'll ever have, I'll first think about, what is my purpose here? Why are we doing this? Like, whether it's a retreat or a brunch or whatever it is, even if it's casual and I'm just gathering people I love, I'll be like, okay, the purpose of this is literally just to gather people I love, and I need to not create any more intention other than put food on the table. But I have less time for, unfortunately, those gatherings now, because it's a good thing, but I do feel a little bit of pressure to create more, to affect more people. So, and anytime we have an us event, I'm like, okay, what's the purpose tonight? And usually for me, the purpose is to connect people and to teach them something new. But for you listening at home, anytime that you are thinking about your gathering, like I really invite you to think about what the purpose is for the evening and let your purpose be your guide. So specifically, let's say you're having a birthday dinner and it's your birthday. And maybe you want to, your purpose for the night is to celebrate yourself through connecting the people that most matter to you. So what does that look like with your friends coming together? A suggestion might be to have a set seating plan to get people outside of their comfort of sitting next to their partner or someone that they might know and connecting them in that way. And then going around the table and doing, a quick, what's something about you that people might find interesting, or what was the craziest thing you did last week, but some sort of point of reference where a person can share a bit about themselves and the people around the table can get a feel for who that person is. And what that also does is just gets people to feel comfortable and connects the entire table. When we gather and the table stays together, those are some of the best dinner parties that I've ever been to, because you're not stuck talking to the person to your right or your left, and you all know and you've been there. If those two people aren't awesome, like, sorry, there's your evening, and you go home and you feel like you have no energy because you've been chit-chatting and small talking the entire night. So the job of a host really is to hold space and ensure that their guests are connected. And you as a host need to figure out how to do that. I have lots and lots of suggestions. I don't want to monopolize the podcast with that, but please do connect with me. And a lot of people actually have been and saying, we're having a girls' weekend and we want to make it really special. My first question is, okay, what is the purpose of the weekend? And from that purpose, we walk backwards and then figure out what the steps will be that weekend to create some intentionality.
I love that. And, you have a reputation of throwing a good party. And so one of the things that I like, that I really liked about the Friendsgiving that we did was I like the assigned seats because I have full faith and trust and confidence in you. And I figured that you were going to separate Jen and I.
Yeah.
But I was excited to see who you were going to sit, next to me, or who I was going to be seated next to. And I think that that's great. I mean, when your reputation of knowing your audience, knowing what the outcome is. And, I had a lot of faith that you would, set me up with some cool people.
Thank you. No, guest list is super important. I, before every single event, meditate over the guest list. Wow. Literally. And sometimes, I don't know everyone. The Her database has over 1,000 people in it now, so I don't know all of them, but I'll still think about, I know what that person does, right? And who would be maybe exciting for them to sit next to. Like, I won't sit two lawyers next to each other because there's no need for them to... Right. But maybe sitting you next to a lawyer could be kind of interesting and provide some new insight for them. So it's really, I don't know if it's a skill or what it is, but it's something that I spend a lot of time on, and I think it's important, and it's worked out well. So I don't take it lightly.
Jen and I were hosting Thanksgiving here. We had my sister was here, and another couple was over. And as we were, preparing that morning, I looked at Jen. I was like, Jen, we need like a question.
Yeah.
It's like, we need a question that's like going to like unite the table, like we got to do it. I was like, what's the question? And she was like, I don't know. I'm trying to make something, I was like, we got to come up with a question.
Did you guys come up with a question?
We didn't. I mean, well, at the, like beforehand, it wasn't premeditated. And then everybody gathered and we're sitting there, and I took a moment, and I was just like feeling what it was. Yeah. And my sister has one of my favorite stories. One of the sort of the coolest things I ever heard was she was in Italy when she was in college, I think, with her boyfriend. And I'm going to screw up the story, but I think it was Christmas. They were standing outside of the Vatican at Christmas, and they were in line to go to Christmas Mass, but they didn't have tickets. They were young and like whatever. And some nun just came up to them in the middle of this huge line in the Vatican and looked at them and was like, do you guys want to go inside? And they were like, yeah. And she was like, okay, come with me. And so they got to, have like fucking Christmas Mass or Easter Mass or whatever, like in the Vatican. And so I wanted her to tell that story to the people that hadn't heard it. And so I was like, okay, all right, that's cool. So what is it that strikes me about that? And I was like, oh, it was like a surprise moment of grace when somebody surprised you with an act of, I don't like the act of kindness, but it was more than that. It was like just kind of a moment of grace, it was especially at the Vatican, right? There's that sort of that spiritual quality to it. And so we all went around and said, what was the time like here on Thanksgiving, what can you be thankful for about a time when somebody just like showed you a kindness that you just totally were unexpected?
Did your guests resonate with it?
Totally. It was awesome.
So you had a nice dinner.
Yeah, it was great.
Right?
Yeah,
amazing. I'm so happy to hear that you guys did the question.
Yeah, and it was because we were at the Friendsgiving like 2 nights before.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and I forget what that question was that we had there, but it was like, I appreciate the intentionality of the whole thing.
And it's literally as simple as that, as a host, putting out a thoughtful question that will help align with your purpose for the evening to help people stay together. Because at the end of the day, all of your guests, like, they want to be together. They don't want to, again, be talking to the person to their left or their right, and that's it. So a good one to keep in mind for any gathering, right? It's a simple one that works along many types of occasions, is having everyone at the table say a toast to what it means to them to have a great life. Okay. Yeah. So that's easy. Everyone has an idea of what that is, and also have them clink. And I like to make everyone clink in a different language, like, skål or prost or na zdrowie. And then I also make it sometimes fun by saying that the last person to make that toast has to sing their toast. So it encourages a little bit of movement. But once people get into it, it's really fun. And you start to notice that at first some of the toasts might be a little bit quick and people are like feeling awkward that they're speaking. But then as more people start to open up and the toasts get lengthier, they'll continue to get lengthier because people will get really into the experience. So
it's also toasting.
Yeah. So it's also a good idea as a host to set the tone. Yeah. So to be kind of like give people permission to talk for a while. And also I mentioned I'm Russian, like our entire culture functions on toasts. Yeah. That's what we do all night long. So I'm sure I get some of that from there.
Nice.
But yeah, question is good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
And you guys also do something in the her group that I know Jen has really appreciated, which is the ask.
Yeah. That's been really, I think, the success of creating community within the her network. So every dinner with her, it's 25 women. I'm not going to give the whole format away, okay?
No,
just for the ladies that will come, not to ruin it for you. But the foundation of the dinner is an ask. So you put out whatever it is in your life that you need help with, personally, professionally, emotionally, spiritually, anything. And it's, anything that the table can support you in, whether it be us holding hands and saying a prayer for someone that's sick in your family, or whether it be offering you a really valuable contact for maybe an investor that you're looking to connect with, or you want to share a relationship gripe and see if other women at the table have experienced something similar. And it is so powerful because when you have these women at the table who are kind of kicking ass in the world and you expect for them to have all of their shit together, and then they come out with what is really going on or a problem, you start to see the humanity all around you and you understand that everyone's going through it and you have more compassion.
Yeah. Breaking the kind of the veneer, especially of social media.
Absolutely.
Right. I remember when Jen, she was intimidated with like New York and she was having, some hard times coming up here and stuff. And then when she went to her dinner, she came back and she was like a different person.
Yeah.
She was like, awesome. Oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Everyone here is kind of fucked.
I mean, we all are, and that's A-okay, and it's important to talk about it. We're in the age of vulnerability, as some would say.
Sure.
And I think the reason I've struck a lot of chords, especially when I travel to places like Scandinavia, is because I'm unapologetic about where I'm at, right? So if someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm like, well, I just got these hormones and I'm really feeling cray. And they're like, oh my God, this girl actually said how she's feeling and it's not great. And it gives them permission to do the same. So it's kind of like the more that we are authentic to ourselves and how we're really doing, we're giving permission for people to do the same.
So how do you translate, you don't have to give the play-by-play, but how do you translate sort of the spirit of some of this stuff into corporate environments?
Yeah.
When you're helping launch corporate events and gatherings.
There's been a lot of talks in the corporate world about creating culture. but there hasn't been a lot of talk about creating community. And actually, it is, the data behind this, I don't have it all in front of me, but I just did a really interesting deck on this, is that the relationships that people have at work are significantly more connected to retention than to almost anything else that an employer can do. So it's creating community internally and ensuring that the people in your offices know each other, understand each other.
So when they feel good, they stay.
When
they don't
they
quit,
feel
they
good,
don't
they
leave.
stay. Correct.
Okay.
And the second thing is actually training. I believe 48%.
Wow.
So community internally is huge. And the focus right now with doing this in a corporate setting, actually Standard being one of them, is to connect teams and using similar formats that we have at Her and Us to bring a team together. Instead of doing, everyone does this happy hour thing. No one wants stupid happy hour. Like, I get those invites and my eyes roll to the back of my head because it's exhausting to make small talk at the end of the day, as opposed to, all right, we're having a dinner or we're having a lunch and we've put together, we did this at the Standard the other day, a Mad Libs where each of one of us had to read the Mad Libs and fill in our own answers. And then we actually also had a question. Of course, my table had a question where I asked everyone to share why they got into hospitality originally and why they're still here. And that was such a powerful exercise for people at the table to really get to know each other. And when we connect as humans and not as just coworkers, we start to care more about each other and support each other in the workspace. And I think employers need to really start connecting to that because it's going to affect their bottom line immensely. So, and also training, I'm actually also focusing on, as my background's in hospitality as well, it's a nice fit with community building, but working on service training in both the sales teams of hospitality industries or any sort of industry that sells anything. I've developed a training for that, and also any type of service-facing profession. So again, it's first in any training, you connect your people, which a lot of trainers miss, and you have them understand the core of one another. They feel safe, they're ready to receive information, and then you give them information. And by actually providing training in general and investing in your people, you are giving them a huge infusion of mojo to stay with you because you're without telling them, showing them that you really care about them. You're investing in them.
Sure.
A lot of companies don't realize that, and they just see the expense of a training and are like, oh no, we don't need this.
Right.
There's so much that they're missing out on there.
And I would imagine too, I don't know how you would study it or track it, but I would imagine that the healthcare costs could go down. I mean, if you've got people that are, not hating their neighbor, identifying and connecting as a part of a community, just the decrease in cortisol and adrenaline and, the activation of the parasympathetic to help them relax. And obviously you're using essential oils, I'm sure, in all of your,
no, I definitely am.
all of your events.
100%.
And, just incorporating all of that stuff just leads to healthier
there
people.
have been studies on this. I forget the gentleman's name, Dan something, who studies blue zones, but there's 9 things that he talks about to prolong life. And I believe, it doesn't matter where it falls on the 9 list, but one of the things is a sense of community.
Yeah. Well, loneliness has been shown to be in one of these studies was the greatest risk factor for mortality.
Yeah.
It's more than obesity.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So think about those people in the middle of, the ocean living in the Greek islands that are eating their olive oil, drinking wine and sitting on their porches. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
They live into their hundreds because they're happy.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it, I think a lot of people's digestive health has to do with the environment in which they're eating.
Totally.
And that like these business dinners are like, that's the worst thing you could do. I remember I had this client who would take his, he managed a team, he would take his employees out when it's time for their review. And he would take them this really nice lunch. And I was like, dude, that is a waste. I was like, they're not tasting their food. They're not going to enjoy it. I was like, and then he goes, I wait till the dessert to give them the review. I was like, dude, you're killing these people. I was like, have the review in your office.
Yeah.
And then take them to lunch.
I totally agree. And I also think just companies are spending so much unnecessary money on that type of entertainment where people are just trying to get through it. And instead, the way I would do it, look, this is how I would run my business, but get them into a home. You want to make your people feel special? If you can, take your team to your house, hire a caterer or whatever, but take them to your home. That's, I think, a powerful tool to also make people feel really valuable. You're sharing something intimate.
Yeah. And you've had a crazy upbringing, right? I mean, when you came here to the States, you encountered, I mean, it's just hard, right?
I haven't talked a ton about it, but I've recently started being open about, I think, why also I so much or resonate and want to connect people.
Right.
And to really, like, ultimately what I'm trying to do is to, in any way I can, make everyone be seen for the amazing person that they are. And a lot of that for me comes from when we came over. I was 7, almost 8, and we had no money. So I was placed into a school system that was English as a second language, which was, kind of really far, but I was bussed out into truly like the ghetto of ghettos. We were already living in not the best of neighborhoods, and this was like the hot zone. And I'm white. And the school happened to be predominantly African-American, Hispanic, and having myself be a handful of the white kids, like it was actually complete reverse discrimination. Also tall and blonde, so I stood out, and I couldn't speak English. So a lot of the jabs were, oh, you think you're better than me, right? So I started to understand those words, but I couldn't respond, and the lack of response signified, oh, yes, I do. So, it's kind of like this vicious cycle of I got beat up a lot for a long time, and I was really private about it because I knew that my parents were not, or I thought that my parents wouldn't be able to help much in the situation because they were also going through their own struggle. And I think, like, wow, like, you're an 8-year-old kid. Like, kids know, kids are smart. And I didn't bother them with it. And it came out, I think, about 2 years in when I got the chicken pox, and my mom had to put iodine on my spots or whatever medicine that it was. And I would refuse to take my shirt off because I knew that she would see all the bruises. Wow. So she finally took my shirt off, and I had 2 broken ribs. And I never shared that with them, just, out of not wanting to inconvenience my parents, who were also going through a tough time. But yeah, they pulled me out of school, obviously, at that point, and put me into Catholic school, which ironically you would think would be so much better. But that was even worse because no one beat me up, but I was like such a loser. Because at that point I was so academically behind.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep up with the rest of the class, and I didn't know what to wear. And I had all my funny little bows that my mom would have me wear from Russia. So that was actually more painful, even though physically it was, I was sound, but mentally I was like, I'd rather get beat up than like have no friends. So point being, I didn't start off in the most of warm and fuzzy environments. And when I came into a position of speaking English, understanding what I needed to do in order to not be like the complete loser face. And I did it. My parents transferred me to a new school in 7th grade, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, my name is Erica, not Marika. You got to buy me these jeans. I need Doc Martens. And I chameleoned myself into the society, really like pushed away my culture to just blend in. And what that at that point did for me is I started to gain confidence and again be secure in the fact that, okay, I'm likable, I'm smart. And from, the point of where I did, I guess, get a little bit of social power, I made a promise to myself that I would always be nice to people and treat everyone the same. So I think it's from that place that I really, inclusivity is really important to me. And look, that's a blanket statement. I just mean, like, I want everyone to be seen, and I'm not. That's why I also like my gatherings get a little bit out of control because I'm like, oh, and they should come, and then they should come. Yeah. Just because I want to involve everyone.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a big driver for me.
That's amazing. One of the things that struck me when I first met you and still strikes me is, you have a way of asking, like, hey, how are you? And like, what do you need? Or how can I help you? Or what are you working on? It's this sort of this way of identifying that is just very heartfelt. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody ask that question And I've seen you ask it to others like so consistently. And it's just like, it feels so natural. It's like, there's no manipulation there. There's no game. There's not a like, what is in it for me? It's just, hey, like, I know some people, like, what are you working on? What do you need? How can I connect you? How can I help you? And like the rush of that you seem to get, that seems totally authentic to me, of like connecting to people that wouldn't have otherwise met. I mean, I think you told me a story once that like your boss at the Standard was like, how do you do this?
Yeah, they're probably like, are you doing work or are you no, they appreciate it. There's a book called The Go-Giver, and someone actually sent it to me as the book reminded them of me, or vice versa, whatever it was. And I read the book, and it was basically a story about this guy who wound up changing the lives of so many people. And you don't know at the end that it's this guy, but literally just through the only way he knew how to be in the world of just introducing people. So it's like, you kind of have it or you don't. Yeah. It's certainly like a learned practice for people in networking skills or whatever. But for me, it's just who I am. Mm-hmm. I want to connect people. I want to help people achieve their goals. And my currency is connection, right? So, and I've figured that out. And it comes from a super genuine place. And I really enjoy it. I'm recently actually playing with the romance space.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think I have 2 successful matches. So actually, this is kind of cool for the podcast. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah.
So on a couple of weeks ago on Facebook, I put out a give. And I said to all the men in my world, if you are interested in meeting a quality woman, I have a list of over 1,000 of them. I'm ready to make some, setups. Put in the comments or message me privately 3 qualities or values that you most admire in a partner. And I kind of did it flippantly because we were having that us dinner, and I was like, why is it always more girls than guys that register for these things? And my Facebook blew up.
Yeah.
I was a little shocked, to be honest. Like, I got private DMs. I'm still getting messages.
Amazing.
And I was like, whoa, okay. Thank you guys for opening up to this, but also like, men are seeking connection as well. And women often think that, it's just us. No, men are seeking it too. It's just harder, I think, sometimes for you guys to get organized on that front. But anyways, all these amazing men, I have all these words, and I actually started looking at the her list and at the men I had, and I was like, all right, what do I have here? And there's 2 couples that really jumped out at me. And one of them, it was really crazy because I just met this guy, but I was like, I really have a feeling you're going to get along with this girl.
Yeah.
And they went out on a date, and they had a very successful first date.
All right.
So that feels like a win. And he said to me, he was like, I'm really sensitive about this because, you're a friend, and if this doesn't go right, I just, don't want to jump in. And I was like, at the end of the day, think about the worst outcomes. Right. If you guys don't get along, like, who cares?
Right.
Like, I don't care. I'm over it. You're over it. But if there's a match, like, wow, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I think the opportunity cost is like very much towards one side.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm playing with that. Matchmaker Marika.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk about this. Because my thing with matchmakers is a lot of times people are single because they don't have the skills to like not be awful in relationships. And so you might set people up that would be perfect together, but if they're like still reeling in all of their shit,
totally,
they may not get there.
No,
and so
they got to do that work.
But we should talk about, we can, we'll talk about.
Yeah,
we'll
partner
just
up.
Do a thing. You got the people, and then,
little system.
Yeah, and then it's we'll break it down. And they could have the coaching with me, and we'll sort it out. Yeah, it's good. Matchmakers charge like $10,000 to $20,000.
I've heard.
Yeah, it's like,
when I'm broke next year because I don't have a full-time job. If any of these things work out, guys, just take me out to dinner.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Now, what were the kind of qualities that guys said that they wanted?
This is really interesting. So the first that got the most response was kindness. Okay. Second was curiosity, which I loved.
Yep.
Third was a mix of, and ladies, listen to this because a lot of women say men don't want this, but this was interested, independent, intelligent, or like a go-getter, like something around being a go-getter. And then the fourth, which was a bit surprising, was honest, which I say surprising because I thought that would have been more of a given. And women, when you ask them, that you won't really see anyone say honest. And I kind of questioned why this might be. And I think it's because women aren't as direct as men are, and we cause a lot of pain by trying to protect, whether it be a boyfriend or a partner or whatever, just by trying to protect people's hearts. And instead of being really direct and being like, look, this is the situation, we sugarcoat it. And it often leads to more pain. And honesty is being, because I think when a guy commits, he really commits and he falls, and he doesn't want to go, even if you're trying to either send the signals or, you're unsure yourself. And they're like, what's going on? Like, you guys are pretty simple. Like, tell me yes or no. And if you tell me I don't know, like, that's still, like, I'm still around,
Right.
So,
yeah, I get it. I completely get it. And it's one of these things that I've worked on with a lot of my female clients that I've been coaching with, where it's just like, it's like you realize that if you're not telling the truth, if you're not speaking your truth, like there's nothing for him to love. So you wonder why these guys leave.
Yeah.
It's like, what was there? Some shape-shifting, weird kind of like morass of a human being. And I keep meaning to try to write an article about this, but I haven't been able to. I can't get it to flow right. But it's basically something like, if you want to find out if you're being honest in a relationship, you have to just look at how you answer one question that is presented almost daily to you, which is, what do you want to do for dinner? Because it's so easy to just be like, I don't care.
Yeah.
When you actually might care.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, But if the instinct is, I don't care, right? There's an opportunity there to just kind of look at that and to just take a moment as a little self-reflection and be like, is that true? Do I really not care? Or am I between Chinese and Italian, but I definitely don't want Indian food?
Yeah.
But see, that's very different, right? It's like, it makes it easier to narrow it down.
Oh, I love it. It's a good one.
I also loved at the weekend that I had the chance to facilitate that conversation, where one of the guys was talking about having like the day of the decision maker or something. I forget how he said it, but it was like in the relationship, Tuesdays, that it's your job to make the decision. So if both people are coming back with, I don't care, it's really authentic, I don't care, I really don't care, that on Tuesdays, you've got to make the decision. And on Thursday, she's going to make the decision.
Yeah.
I thought that was great, to combat this kind of decision fatigue.
Yeah.
But I think that's fantastic. And those are all great qualities. I mean, before I started dating Jen, I said the number one thing that I want in a relationship is kindness. Because I was with someone who was really, really smart.
Yeah.
And it's, along the way, we just lost the kindness with each other.
Yeah. I'm
equally as culpable of that. But I was like, whatever relationship I get into, kindness is going to be a priority.
Yeah.
And I'd love it if that person is just kind of the embodiment of kindness. And I'm also going to hold myself to a much higher standard than I ever did before to be kind.
Yeah.
Because
create space for that kindness.
Yeah. And to find opportunities to express that. And if it's, giving another compliment or, doing something that, a household chore that I wouldn't have normally done, it's having that kind of attention to that. And, that also means that I got to be kind to myself.
That's the first priority.
Yeah. And 100%. For people who aren't, a lot of the women that I've coached with or that I've seen or talked with, when you're not in the habit of being kind to yourself, it's really difficult to be authentically kind to somebody else without approaching burnout, without approaching that kind of massive fatigue that comes from putting on that good face.
100%. You got to take care of yourself first.
Totally.
Self-love.
Yeah. And I love the curiosity too. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about it today, actually. What I love about curiosity is built into curiosity is humility.
That's exactly where it comes from. Yeah.
Right. Because you can't be arrogant and be curious.
Yeah.
And so I love that, that wanting someone who's curious because it has both of those things.
Yeah.
And so if you've got someone who's kind, someone who's curious and also humble, then they can be that independent, smart go-getter without being awful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I say awful sort of
No, I
jokingly,
get
but
it.
it's true. I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, for guys, don't be a dick,
Yeah.
you know, and for ladies, like, don't be awful.
Yeah.
We know when we're being a dick. We know when we're being awful.
Yeah. But
So when you match people up, my advice would be just look at them and be like, okay, guys, don't be awful.
yeah, I mean, I give a little prerequisite to each. Like, I really, especially these days, am feeling for the guys out there. I think it's hard for men. I really do. I don't know. I'm not going to be like the expert on this, and I don't want to cause controversy, but men are really misunderstood. And I see that so much in the work that I've done, both in community building and then with us. I mean, trust in us and really, really getting deep with men. Guys are really misunderstood. And because you haven't learned the tools of communication, because our society doesn't place emphasis on that as a successful factor in like masculine tendencies, you often can't explain yourselves. And it creates a lot of confusion both for the man internally and for the world that he's interacting with. So someone might label you a dick when really you're like, shit, did I just do something wrong? I feel like I did something wrong, but I wasn't trying to. And also, like, I think a lot of arrogance is often, or, you know, like someone being a tight ass is misperceived as, or that is masking just insecurity and like, I feel nervous.
Right.
I see that a lot with guys. One of the recent setups was guys a little stiff, and I had to tell the girl, I was like, look, like, you come in here with open eyes and give him a chance. Don't judge the exterior. And part of actually trusting me and going there, she was like, okay, if she sees something here, I'm going in much more relaxed versus kind of with fists up being like, this guy's really tight.
And that's the beauty of working with a matchmaker, especially someone that you know, you know, that you've known for a while, is that people are, I would imagine, would be much more inclined to give someone else the benefit of the doubt. And what I've seen with people who are frustrated in the dating scene is at some point you stop giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You know, there's kind of this jaded exterior that happens and then a jaded interior. And, you know, but if it's like, oh, this person matched me up with this, you know, or profiles or whatever, you know, and it's like, okay, cool, you know. And my whole thing is like, listen, if you've gone on a first date and there was no obvious red flags, I mean, I think even red flags should be reevaluated, but, you know, if there's no obvious red flags, but it wasn't like off the charts, like this chemical shitstorm of joy, like that's good.
100%.
You know, so go on a second date, go on a third date, and like, oh, you liked it, but you're kind of indifferent, but you're open to giving me a second chance. I'm putting my money there
100%.
than on the person who's like, oh my God, it was so great, and they were like, let's move to Italy, and we're gonna get a VW bus, and it's gonna be great, and you're just like,
100%. Slow burn.
Call me in a month when he disappears on you.
Slow burn is good.
Yeah.
Into it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Amazing. Well, fuck, thanks for coming on.
Thanks
this
for
is
having me.
great.
This was super fun.
Yeah, it's nice.
This was a good podcast.
Woo-hoo, we did it.
Actually, super fun.
All right. How can people find you? Where do you want them to get in
You
touch
can find
with you?
me on Instagram. It's my first name, Marika, Marika .Frumes, Frumes. And that's on Instagram. And you can just DM me for whatever.
There it is. It's all on the gram.
All on the gram.
You're the best. Thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
having me.
And the rest of you out there, go throw some good parties. Ask good questions. And come back and keep listening to podcasts. Tell your friends. Oh, I have an email now. You can pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. So now you can email me and we can, you know, talk about it there. Or I'm on Instagram at James E. Rohr. That's ROHR. You can friend both Mark and I. And then we'll have a good time.
And set you up.
Yeah, she's going to set you up and then
Jim will help
I'll
you.
make sure, I'll make sure you're not awful or don't be a dick. All right, see you guys next time.